we're in fact about to backtrack. Where I messed up, yes, backtracking. Reporters do it every day. Backtrack pertaining to one small detail in which I myself made a mistake on. And no, I don't work for FBI or with them. I could, but anyways, the 26 miles in which I stated that Asia possibly walked, and when I said more than likely she could have not did that sort of thing, but she may have walked a percentage of, say, maybe even 2 or maybe even 5 miles, who knows? Because look at this, when I said that I have to backtrack, because see, eyewitnesses said they seen her 1.3 miles away from home when they seen her, and yet not one of them eyewitnesses chose to pick her up. See what I'm saying? So when I made the mistake of saying Asia walking 26 miles, that was a mistake on my end. I got the short stick end of the deal with that part, right? Play on words. But that has to in fact stay in all my videos, not in all of them, but a few of them that I made in saying that, because look, if you're going to walk and say be seen by eyewitnesses in the middle of the night around 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 1.3 miles away from home, is to know somebody didn't more than likely pick you up around 1.3 miles, because if they did, even that will be stated in the case. As in the uncover, unravel, of which is why I'm leaving the 26 miles there, because if nobody picks you up at 1.3 miles, then that's to say you could have walked further, as in the distance pertaining to even that, which is why I'm not deleting anything, and I'm keeping even that up in the video. Because see, people that have been watching this and following this whole case will know just where I messed up in that one small bit and piece of the detail of the walking. Because see, to see through something is to in fact make your way, and yet not fully in the dark enough to scope it out, as in going there all the way, right? As in, where could somebody have stopped as they're making their way from even away from 1.3 miles going into 26 miles, to say where the bag was found? A young girl like that, even being athletic, could have walked 5 miles, who knows? Or maybe even 2.5 miles. And so I have to leave that in there, that I'm repeating, and I repeat just enough for you to never forget anything of which I stated. Because if you've been watching the Asia degree case long enough, you will have known where I messed up. And I'm sure you did. And just that one. Everything else is on point, but that one mistake right there, I fell out of line with that, because I was so busy getting carried away, like this does not make sense and it doesn't add up, right? Because the eyewitnesses, that's where what made me mess up, because I'm like, they don't even make sense. Because even the average woman and man knows that there's even money reward in helping to find a missing child, and yet even people in the public know that you know what, people gain money off of that if I can help with that or whatever. And yet I myself, if I ever got money like that, I would in fact give it back to police, or give it back if, say, the girl was killed, as in a burial. You use that type. Anytime something money is offered like that and you're seeing whatever, you give that money back and say if a body is found, because that helps to lay somebody to rest. And yet people still know that there is in fact reward money that comes with those sort of things, such as just claiming to see something in which you may or may not have seen, as in the drive-by in the middle of the night, right? Let me pause for 1 second. Let me pause for 1 second, because this is going to keep going off and it's going to bother even us. And that, the strategy of the calendar and knowing what comes next, even on my end of what I have to do, and even where I have to be seen doing it, which is why the reminder of tomorrow in the process. So let me see. Yes, people do in fact go for reward money pertaining to that, and yet that is not my style. Because see, if the young child, even if she was alive, and say I got reward money just for finding Asia, I would in fact, if the young girl was found tomorrow and say she was alive and I helped in that, as in the unravel, uncover who could have done this, I would in fact give that money to Asia herself. yes, as a gift from myself back to her, that here, young child, you're going to need this money somewhere pertaining to the future if you are alive. But if you're dead, I'm going to give that money back to you as well as in a burial and proper laid the rest. Moving on. So, but yes, eyewitnesses do know that reward money is in that, which made me question from the beginning of could they really have seen her? Was they trying to step, or were they trying to step up the plate in order to gain something? I would never want to take any type of money out of anybody's hands pertaining to any missing children, because see, that money needs to go back into something and helping to find and discover other children. Because remember, there's a lot of time, work, and a lot of manpower hours placed into that sort of thing. That type of money you put into stuff like that, and a reward you don't keep. Let me see. And not only that, that could in fact, that type of money, reward money, could be used to actually build an Asia degree fund pertaining to, say, if she's dead, as in what could come later or anything like that. That's how you use stuff like that in honor and memory of a person, and not wanting to gain something, being an eyewitness. So people like us, we think logically. We know once something gets started, it has to keep going, even if somebody is possibly dead, and you're using proper funds in a proper way, as in knowing that more missing children are out here, and yet it takes even money with that. And so to use a reward money, and say if you found somebody alive or possibly dead, is to even give it back. It's what you do in helping to find people. That money has to be put to better use and better things, and not collecting money like that and putting it towards petty, stupid things. Because some people get reward money and put it on stupid things. No, you give it back. Put it back into the community is what I'm trying to say. So, the green car and eyewitnesses, right? No, let me go back. Rewinding. I just rewind on you. You just didn't even see it yourself, because that's out of line. The eyewitness. Okay, so this camera looks, hopefully when it uploads, it's this clear. Dear love, I think our eyes have met before. Talk about you, the viewer. Now I do that in the other, I don't know, that popped up in my head. It came up random. Dear lover, the viewer, I think our eyes have met before. I don't know where that popped out. It just came out my mouth randomly. But yeah, the eyewitness. The first eyewitness, and not the other eyewitnesses. That very first eyewitness, as stated on the father's 911 call, or yes, the 911 call, father 911 call, mother 911 call transcript, as in being read by the public. It was stated by Asia's father, as I stated before, that I had to look out for a minute. I was seeing something. Running past. Anyway, so the eyewitness stated to her father that they seen Asia, right? That's in fact the first, that's in fact a clue. That's the first eyewitness. I point that out, and another individual, yes, in the comment section, pointed that out as well. Dear young love, the one that I was going back and forth in conversation. Her last name is Taylor. I won't say the first name. But so pertaining to that, that was in fact the first eyewitness, and not the second, third, or the last on the playing field with all this garbage mess that somebody had set up, or whatever the issue is. It's a garbage mess, is what I'm trying to say. And not Asia, no. So the first eyewitness was the neighbor, as Asia's father stated, and therefore, yes, they would have in fact been the first eyewitness to state what time they seen Asia walking down the road before 6:30 a.m. when Asia's parents woke up. Because see, her parents woke up at 6:30. And yet to see something, being a neighbor, a lovingly neighbor, or whatever you were, on Valentine's Day anniversary, is to say that you've seen Asia before. And yet the sunlight doesn't even hit the horizon around even February. Daylight savings time's it points in this as well. Daylight saving time doesn't get started, all that time changing time, around somewhere April or something like that, right? When seasons and all that change. So it was still dark, because to even change the timing pointed to daylight savings and all that is to say that the timing, I could be messing up on that. But FBI know what I'm talking about. seasons changing timing. It's a no, the sunlight is not going to completely come up until say around 6:45, 6:55, 7 a.m. And so that eyewitness that said that they seen Asia before is to know the parents didn't wake up till 6:30, which we go back in reverse, roll in reverse. To solve a problem is to go in reverse. The parents wake up at 6:30 a.m. And yet the first eyewitness was the neighbor who said they seen her. They had to in fact have seen her before 6:30 a.m., which means it was still dark outside and pitch black on Highway 18, if even the neighbor was there, which is why I question the neighbor's whereabouts, right? And so in me saying that, the father said that the neighbor seen her. The father said the neighbor said they seen Asia walking down the road, and then he repeated himself. The neighbor said they seen a child walking down the road. So it was still dark out, completely dark out. So the neighbor would in fact know the time. So that falls completely out of line, because to know that Asia left around 3 or 4 a.m., there's a whole completely different time span. It doesn't match around 6:30 a.m. That's 2 hours or 2.5 hours apart, is what I'm trying to say. So what were the neighbor? So depending on the time, Asia's neighbor said they seen Asia walking down the road, and the neighbor seen a child walking down the road after the neighbor said they seen Asia walking down the road. As Asia's father stated on his 911 call, as in the transcript I read and others read, the neighbor is again the first eyewitness, that being number one. But the parents woke up at 6:30 a.m., so how could this be? They noticed that she was gone at 6:30 a.m. So they woke up around that time framing of somewhere around 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:20. Yes, enough to make it to her bedroom, 6:30, somewhere around that time. How is the eyewitness seeing her before? Asia left at 3 a.m. or around 4 a.m. So how does a neighbor see a young child at 9 years old at that time, in the middle of the night, in the dark, at that time, and yet meet face to face, eye to eye with the father around 6:30, because he made the 911 call around 6:38, 6:39, somewhere around that time frame, right? It's on the transcript type of stuff, right? So if that's the case, then how does a neighbor see that sort of thing? That doesn't add up, and that's out of line. That's completely deep out of line. And even my eyes being blind in the daylight savings, whatever this is right here, the making, whatever, that's off, as well as I'm saying the daylight savings, right? But that don't make sense. The dreaded cover-up, and even the detail. Let me explain to you. The neighbor met face to face and eye to eye because the neighbor didn't pick up the phone to call the father to tell the father that they seen Asia at that time. Nowhere has it been documented stated that the neighbor called right as soon as they seen her, as in went back in the house and ran to use the phone to contact the parents, enough for the father to say it on the 911 call, or even for the neighbors to, as soon as she left, knock on the parents' door and bang on the parents' door to try to get in to let the parents know at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. when the supposed neighbor first eyewitness saw her, enough to let the parents know that they seen her walking down the road. So what is wrong with this story and the add up and the cover up and all the rest? The scientific detail and pulling back layer to layer where everybody or somebody forgot to. That don't make sense. Because see, even a neighbor to have been around those children as much would in fact have known something was there, as in suspicious. To be a neighbor and be around some school children that are in fact your friendly neighbor, huggable, lovable children, down the block, close to the block, but on the same block and even next door, is to know when something like that comes, as in stands out, present itself as even a child wearing a night garment or whatever she wore. But not just that, just seeing her face alone, leaving out the front door of her house and say carrying her bag and whatever down the block. At that time, 3-4 a.m. is to know something is in fact there as in wrong. The neighbor, to be around your neighbors and be around even Asia, even watching her from a distance for God knows how long the neighbor lived there, being friendly with the parents, that's in question of itself. Because see, to see young children play outside is to even study their behavior as they're outside. See, I'm very observant, and yet not everybody is. And yes, even some grown people sit out on their porch, and they even did that back in the day. Yes, they did, more so than today, because of technology being upgraded enough for people not to want to go outside in the first place. People wasn't online all like that, so many of them in the summertime sat outside. So I'm thinking this neighbor had to be around in possibly various summers enough to see even how Asia act in her behavior of playing with other children, strange behavior, maybe, possibly. Any type of behavior would have in fact been scoped out by that first eyewitness neighbor who have seen Asia. And with police and everybody else saying that supposedly somebody abducted her or something. Something about that is off. This whole thing is chilling. It's not right. The cold factor was even chilling. I'm thinking a neighbor living that close would have in fact got in a car and followed Asia and said, Asia, young baby, why are you out at this time and where are you going? Do you need a ride? Are you going to the store if there's stores in that area? Where are you going? In fact are you going? That don't seem right for a neighbor just to watch that young child go down the block at 3 a.m. and then the father notes it back on the 911 call that the neighbor said they seen her, and the neighbor wait until the parents are well awoke to say. And then not only that, the neighbor not say what time they seen her. That stood out to me the most. The neighbor should have specifically stated right then to the parents, she left at 3 a.m. Matter of fact, she left at 3:30 a.m. She left at 4 a.m. She left at 5 a.m. And then on top of that, being a nosy neighbor, for the neighbor to say, you know what? You guys, I felt something was wrong about it. That's what a loving neighbor would have said, or kind, gentle, understanding nature neighbor would have said. You guys are looking for her. I kind of sensed something was off. That's what a neighbor would have stated to the father. That, you know what? Man, I was thinking about going behind her to see if she needed a ride, or going behind her to ask her, because nosy neighbors do that type of thing. They want to feel important. They want to feel a part of something enough to say even more than just them having small talk with the father about just saying that they seen her. That's not right. That's in fact pointing in a whole different direction, is what I'm trying to say. That neighbor would have said a little bit more than what they did to the father. There would have been a whole long morning conversation, to even possibly the neighbor following the father into the house to see what could have happened, or possibly even standing outside of the door just to wait enough for the father to come back and tell. Because nosy people are just that. They're not going to be around a missing person thing and not want to be a part of it right then. That neighbor, nosy neighbor, or whoever said that they seen her being the first eyewitness, that's not right. It's mixed match, as we say in hood terminology. It's not I didn't specifically strategize even my terminology like that, as in it fitting and how I said it, right? But that's not right. That is completely off the playing field, let me tell you. And I'm saying playing field because I mentioned 50 yards off the road when her bag was found. So seeming football or something, some type of sport, play into all this mess, then I just throw the playing field term in there with it, because something is at a standstill in all of this. Somebody somewhere in all this, an eyewitness couldn't have been there, is what I'm trying to say. Somewhere in all of this, whether it was the first eyewitness, such as a neighbor and the father lied about it, but I'm thinking even the police would have interviewed that first neighbor who said that they seen her. I'm guessing that the police, FBI, whoever who do missing person reports, all whoever would have in fact interviewed that neighbor, nosy neighbor who took the time to look out and see Asia walking down the road as it was stated on the father's 911 call. They had to have in fact be interviewed just enough to see that it was there, in a sense that the neighbor themselves was there. And yet where was the neighbor in fact seeing her as she was leaving? Because something is still off in even that. As in the time frame of 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And then in that meeting when the parents woke up. So how is the neighbor outside when Asia first goes missing, as well as outside as when the parents are trying to find her? As in them coming out the door screaming to see where she is, and them running back and forth between the grandmother house and all the family down the street. How is this neighbor everywhere as all this is happening? So you were there first as soon as you saw the child leaving around 3, 4 a.m. And then you're there again when the father comes out the house and the mother comes out the house trying to look for the young girl. That neighbor puts themselves there a whole lot, don't you think? A bit extreme. I'm saying they more than likely are a very nosy person or something. Somebody need to bring the neighbor to me so I can ask even them. Bring them to me. Contact them or something. I would love to question even that neighbor. Because to have an inquisitive mind is to question everybody, as well as question things, as in things that have been set on top of things, such as a bag and all that. There's no luxury in that, as in burying a bag. That's all I'm trying to say. And let me see. What type of person could I see driving a Lincoln Continental or Ford? But more so a green Lincoln Continental. That sort of thing would more than likely be driven by older white men, right? This is no race discrimination involved. But it could also be driven by, say, somewhat middle-aged black men as well. Because it had rust around the rim. It's to know a younger black male figure might drive that sort of car, but he would in fact want to fashion it or something, I'm thinking. Because to have rust around the rim is to know, yes, that's in fact a very old car. It's in fact vintage. But see, I can see a white older man just letting that type of car go, unless say he's into classic collector items such as vehicles, collecting cars like that. When they're older white men doing that, they like to have an upkeep if it's a classic car, as in replacing the well rim and it being rusted, if they collect those sort of things. But if it's a black, I can't really see a younger white male driving that kind of car. If it's a black male, middle age or somewhere around my age, I can see him driving it. But wait a minute, I can see him driving it to a point. But I can see him, because that too is still a collector's item, I could see more of an upkeep wanting to be with that. I don't know why I could see rims or something. Rims. Yes, something of luxury or something placed on that car, despite it being an old car that you're driving. Because I come from where I come from, being raised in various hoods, as well as now living out in a suburban area. I know the thinking of the black male my age, as in the generation or somewhat ages above me, right? As well as older black men, and even that. They like nice, expensive things, and yet I'm trying to see what one of those individuals would have been living out in that country area, driving that type of car on a rural road, living out in that area, driving that type of car, and just letting his wheel wells That points to rims and all that. Hold on, let me pause. I'm trying to not make this video long like the other ones were. Let me pause 1 second. Because, see, you have to look at even that, the make, model of the vehicle, as well as how you think somebody may or may not have lived in the area, depending on race, right? And them driving that type of car out in that suburban area. I mean, not suburban. Why I say suburban? I'm sorry. Wheel liner. The wheel. Hey, stop. Hey, go in there. Thank you. You about to make me mad. Go. Okay, so the wheel well, yes, I see this, the wheel well. See, I have to look up certain things because my father was in fact a mechanic, but I'm not fully into cars as in being observant, knowing which each piece is sizing a piece up, right? So that wheel well, in fact, would be rusted on an old car because they're rusted on newer cars. And so a rim would not in fact fit with that sort of thing. It could or might not. Because, see, even black guys don't like certain things rusted out, is what I'm trying to say. If he was older driving a vehicle, or even younger black driving that vehicle, right? I'm thinking a white man, unless he was a car collector, wouldn't really care about that. But if he was a car collector, he would want something probably more updated, on the upkeep, yes, and not falling by the wayside of things being rusted and all. They like chrome, everything updated, everything. White male car collectors and all that other stuff, right? So if that was a white male who took her in a green car, then he could have lived out in the country and just didn't care about his looks and all that other stuff enough for me to even tie that in with the description. The wheel well. To size up a matter is to take it all the way there, as even describing things, as in how you see them. Because, see, even FBI police watches, when they watch it, they'll know that I'm off in particular things. That points even with them, because, see, sometimes I speak out about stuff and I'm not editing anything out. No, I'm not. I don't care who's mad. Because I don't want to edit out the wrong thing while I'm chopping and cutting, trying to piece stuff. That's inhumane in itself when you edit too much. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can get the cutting too much out and then cut out vital parts, or say where you're trying to go for stuff where you messed up at. And yet even police will know how to, yes, dig and put pieces together pertaining to even the wheel well if I mess up on that. Because, see, I studying is my thing, but if I'm speaking on stuff quickly and yet that is not my field of work, I'm not going to specifically know what all entails a wheel well. How could I? That's not my field of work. But to call something out pertaining to some rims on some cars is to do just that. Call them out. Wheel wells. Because, see, that don't make sense in itself, because wasn't it too dark in the first place for somebody to be able to see some rusted wheel wells on a car? That wheel wells go behind the wheel and not before. Is FBI over there playing a game? I think FBI is completely over there playing a game. FBI is over there playing a game, and they have to be playing a game. I'm sorry, FBI, I called you out on that, but you have to be playing some sort of game, because even common fool like myself, where I mess up here and there, is to actually see with my own two eyes that a wheel well goes behind a wheel and not in front of a wheel. I just looked it up on Google because, remember, my father was a mechanic, and not only that, he had an electrical engineering degree. So my father had the mind of a scientist, which is why I have a mind of a scientist. and picking and pulling things apart, as well as tearing them down and building them back up. So I'm thinking to myself, the FBI said that there was there's a problem in even that, as in the description of FBI over there. That's not to say that they're playing games. No, it's not. No, it's not. You want to be serious with the law. Yes, you do. So I'm sorry. Kisses to you too, the FBI. As well as, yes, the missing persons team. That's a love to y'all. But to say that somebody drove past and seen that there was in fact rust on the wheel wells of the car Asha Degree was getting into, being 9 years old, that's to in fact say that that eyewitness was close enough to pull up on the car to see who was in fact driving the car. Because to have wheels in motion is to come to a complete stop, and yet not all the way, depending on where you're going and who's getting in and why, as in a mischief, right? Mystery. But to come to a complete stop is to gather the pieces back where they fit, as in where even FBI chose to throw even that out, pertaining to the green Continental vehicle, or say a green Continental Lincoln or a Ford. Because see, to see some wheel wells is to know that they are in fact wet of some sort. Remember, you were guided and blinded by the rain. Driving into such heavy downpour of a matter is to know those sort of things are in fact going to get wet, as in soak possibly, or maybe not. Because to not understand and know how wheels, as in the form of fashion of even brakes, touch on even that, as in what's behind the wheel well, or where all spins comes together and me connecting the dots, it's for me to even spin back on the game in that, as in to say, okay, a wheel well. There's brakes, as in the anti-lock system or something all together with that. Let me see. If wheels spin in motion, then the wheel well may or may not spin in motion with that wheel, because it's locked and bolted to an axle. And there's bolts in even that, because see, a wheel well would in fact, remember my father was a mechanic before he died. I was going to say he died in 2007. But see, a wheel well is connected to the axle of a car, I'm thinking. Let me guess, because I don't really know how to work on cars. So a wheel well would in fact be locked and bolted to an axle. And that wheel well may or may not spin, even in heavy congested traffic. Who knows? As a standstill, we're going to stop, so the wheel well will have to stop as well. But I don't know if the wheel well spins in motion when a wheel spins, right? But even all that is locked together pertaining to, say, a wheel being bolted to even that wheel well, because see, if it wasn't bolted to that, then the wheel would in fact get away from you, as in come flying off the car as you're driving it while you're in motion. A wheel well, the wheel of the car is locked to the wheel well. I am thinking. I don't know, because I have not looked this up, and yet I'm trying to guess and figure out and even that. So there's bolts. I can see it visually. There's the wheel. There's in fact the hood cap, and then in the center of that would in fact be the bolts, about 4 or 5 bolts to lock the wheel in, and all that is provided by an axle being bolted to it. So if it's pitch black out there, depending at what angle, so enough for, okay, so wait a minute, so that lets me know right then that the eyewitness that said that they seen Asha Degree getting into that car, the green car, whoever that was, that's to say that that individual had to in fact be an oncoming car onto the vehicle of which Asha was stepping into. They had to be. Because see, you can't see that sort of thing driving and trailing behind a green Continental car and past that car, going around that car as a car sit there, allowing the child to get in and sit down and close the door behind her. Because even that poses a problem pertaining to description of even you stopping enough to see the license plate, see the whole child as you're stopping, enough to go around. You would have seen everything, even including the driver itself, whether they were black or white, driving that vehicle, and whether they were man or woman. You would have been able to see that if you were able to see and match the description of the wheel wells being rusted. But on top of that, that in fact pose a problem if, say, that eyewitness, I don't know which eyewitness seen that sort of thing, but that would in fact pose a problem, because if the eyewitness seen the wheel wells of some sort, they couldn't have seen that. They could and they couldn't have. Because if to say that you were bold enough, tempted enough to look at some wheel wells, you would in fact stare a woman or a man in the face as you're rolling past. Because let me see, I'm in the car, I pull up behind the car, a child is getting into the car. That's enough for me to even see the license plate to even pull up on the car. Because remember, my lights are in fact reflecting back to me everything that is on the back of the hood of the car, as well as the trunk. And even that bump on the back of Lincoln Continentals, as I looked up, that all will reflect to the person behind pulling up that said that they seen Asia getting in the car. So they would have had to been behind her. They would have seen everything, including her wearing a backpack. And not only that, they would have had to, if they passed the car, they would have looked down at the wheel well, possibly not looked the driver in the face, just enough to see that the wheel well was rusted in the form and matter of it was. But I'm thinking even that will block vision somewhere with that, because see, to have tires on a car, tires sit at an angle. They sit like this, forward. Tires sit at an angle. They sit forward like this. Unless somebody pulled over to pick up Asia and turned the wheels inward like this, then you're not going to see as you're coming to pass, because they're sitting like this, tilted towards, say, the side of the road in the direction of where she's getting in the car, right? So a driver coming on the side would have not seen that. But if the car was a incoming car coming onto the direction of, say, where the car was Asia, say two different directions, the oncoming car coming onto where Asia was getting in the car at, if that wheel was in fact tilted into a position of where Asia was standing at as she was getting into the car, then that oncoming car could in fact see the wheel well lit up by the light, just enough to say that they seen that. But to say that you're traveling, going almost 50 something miles an hour on a rural road in a pitch black rain, is to say, how did you see that the wheel wells were in fact rusted? Could that eyewitness have or have not been there? I'll let you decide as in the viewer. Because see, angles point in all this. And I could study something down to a science by just standing here talking all day and letting you, the viewer, understand the dimension, as when you try to size up some details and looking at things specifically at different angles, how even light meets the eyes. Even how lights would in fact have meet those wheel wells, pertaining to even that hubcaps block the vision of a viewer even being able to see completely the wheel wells as well as the tire on the make of the car, right? That just don't make sense for me to drive past, look over and notice that I saw I had to be going, that don't seem right. Because to move at a quicker speed than normal in traffic where there's no traffic in the middle of the night is to say you could not have seen that car standing there, possibly or maybe not, because to drift through wind even, that obstructs vision as well, and some people don't even know that. That in fact, yes, wind, aerodynamics and speed, that in fact impacts your vision, the speed of moving through a moving car, even at 50-45 miles per hour, passing a green Lincoln Continental that's sitting there as you're observing a child getting into the car. Because look, the focus will be more so on the child than it will be on the wheel wells, because it looks suspicious in the first place. And so the person driving past in the vehicle will be in fact looking at the child right there more so than looking at those wheel wells being rusted. They will have to, because I know I would. But everybody thinks and perceives the world different. So Who knows? Maybe they could have looked at the child, saw, "Ooh, that don't look right," and then looked down at the wheels. But when we speaking on wind impacts the vision, as in the motion going 50 something miles an hour, streaming past a child getting into a car, it's to say you may or may not have seen wheel wells being rusted there, because once again, there's aerodynamics in this. To pick up speed and go drifting fast in the rain is to know the rain is going to carry even you there, as in coming your way as you're driving through, which is why the car is in fact angled at a certain way to handle aerodynamics for you to pass through. With even that's why that's science. That's why cars are built the way that they are, with the top of it, the roof being angled at a certain point, right? But even with you driving through past and seeing that, is to know you might not even seen those wheel wells from the beginning, because there's air and speed in that. The only way you can see that is if you at a stop position, is what I'm trying to say, and not at a drifting position, as in a drifting motion driving past. Because see, look, I say that because, for example, I have a photographic mind, which is why I'm able to explain and break things down specifically like a filmmaker would do, because I'm even in film. Remember, I graduated. And sound as well. So, in me saying that, take a picture of something. Experiment yourself, the viewer. Go out somewhere in traffic where it's wide open road. Come across something, whether it's out on a country road, and fly past a mailbox. Do this in the daytime with a camera and a camera lens, on a phone possibly, or even the only way, see, the type of camera that I got that I do film and photograph, it's able to actually pick up certain detail, although you speeding, because I tried it on the interstate. Yes, I did, coming from Virginia. Yes, I did. I took a picture of an actual speed sign that says 70 miles per hour on the interstate, Highway 75 to be specific, right? And that even goes down to Florida from where I'm at. And so I took a picture while we were in motion. We were going, yes, 75, a little bit over 72. And the wind got picked up more so than anything than the 70 mile per hour sign, right? There's a blur. But because my camera is so professional, yes it is, it's top of the line, it was able to actually pick up the 70 mile per hour sign at a standstill, though we were still driving through at around 72 miles per hour. Because that sort of camera is made for those sort of things. It's made for film and television, which is why I was able to pick up that emotion. And that in fact, Misha eyes, and where I'm tying this in, as in, could the eyewitness have seen those wheel wells moving in motion in the dark with headlights? Because see, some of these cameras in my professional camera picks up things as you're going over 70 miles an hour. That's faster than 50 miles an hour. And yet I clicked. I had to hope, because I'm good with my hand, yes, in adjusting the camera just enough to pick it up. It picked up the wind. It picked up the wind, because remember, we were driving through, so it picked up the wind coming this way. But that sign that was standing there, you can see the sign, yes, in broad daylight, as in it looked like somebody professional took it. All was a blur but that sign. The sign is and I still got the photo more likely on my camera. The sign shows all the detail in written form. Nothing is blurred out even in the sign. See what I'm saying? Nothing on that sign of what I took the picture of is not blurred out. And yet to be rolling past something in motion and know your eyes are going to be blurry, because wind plays a part of this, even that is science. And going, say, 45, 50 on a rural road is to know that your eyes are going to meet that motion, as in the blurriness of what you possibly could have saw even in the middle of the night, where rain posed a problem. See, many of us who are in fact into film and TV, as in helping to edit shows, as well as putting them on broad TV that spans all across the globe. Yes. How many countries are there? Somebody could easily say, oh, there's 220 countries, or there's 200 countries, and there's such and such 50 something languages, right? To span all around the world and the globe, and me helping to edit titles in the extremity, their discovery. They know my identity. Yes, they do. So, and me saying that is to know a blur. There's in fact a blur. And speed in motion. So if a person does TV and film, they would in fact know those sort of things. Which is why I'm standing here. Because to be riding too fast past something is to know your eyes are going to gently meet a blur. And they have to. Even in the dark, even if your headlights want to in fact impose on the wheel wells as you're thinking you saw, which you might have not saw. So where did that green car come from? As in the make description, Dear Green Continental, Dear Green Ford. In which police stated that someone claimed that they seen pertaining to the tip-off. Where did the car come from? As in, where does it live and who does it belong to, as well as who was the observer? Because something about that is not specific. Police know. They like this girl game is on point despite her messing up completely at 26 miles and me saying how far Asia walked. But everything else is completely almost on point. I mess up and yet not the lot depending on the information that you give me. Because if I do film, then what? I'm able to decipher the clue in the motion. Because see, I like to take pictures. Let me tell you, I took photographs of my brother's wedding when I went. That's how I made my way up to that 70-mile-per-hour sign on I-75, the interstate, of me taking a picture. I was on my way home from even that. And I like to take photos that are in fact in motion. I do those sort of things. So in my brother's photos that I sent to him, yes, via Facebook, right? Many of his photos include motion. So when his wife, his newly beloved wife, swerved around and she went through so everybody could catch, I picked that up too. I picked up her hand going back in the air as well as what she threw, right? As soon as the broom was set on the ground for them to jump over, I picked up the motion of it going down, as in somebody slowly laying it down, because I like the effect of that. I love slow motion. I like the effect of the movement. When the little girls in my brother's wedding, which is in fact his daughters, all of them, right? They were walking. I picked up the whole body, but I more so aimed for their feet. But the whole photo is there, as in from the body, from the top to the bottom, right? But as I was focused on that, the camera, I let the camera focus on that. But after I took the picture, I was solely focused on how their feet moved. Because even that told in that, as in the picture, as in the standstill, because that presents film and TV, if I was to edit even that, as in the movement of putting that to film. Dear Final Cut Pro, as in me editing, right? I like to see movement in photographs and not just people standing still. I don't like that sort of thing. It's boring. Watch somebody stand there and throw a bouquet, whatever. That's boring. I even took a photo of my brother, what is it, the garner? When you go up under the dress to pull it out. I was snapping shots, boom, 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 as he was going, shot to shot, boom, 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 every single movement. That's what I do, right? Even him coming back up, rising off the floor, represents movement. And it looked, my mom was loving the photos because of how the movement played. But so I'm saying this even points in with me looking and scoping out that wheel well, as in who did it belong to, the identity of the driver of that. Because if you drive past oncoming onto a green vehicle, it's to say you're going to see that car is in fact green because your headlight spoke of that, but you're moving a little bit too fast to even see that rust could be at play there, as in the wheel well. Because if you were able to see that wheel well, you would have been able to see something else. That stood out to me the most. If I'm able to see a wheel well, a wheel well is, yes, in fact, hidden away by the tires, by darkness, but not completely, right? Because even they have to peek through because they're metal if light is shined on them, right? But somewhere in there, something just don't seem right even with that, as in the match. as in the clue. The identity of the driver who saw her getting into that car. Something doesn't match right there. You would have in fact seen something else. Because the speed is the speed in relation to the timing of the speed of the driver passing. They had to have seen something more. Something outside of just a wheel well being rusted like that. They would know that Asia had her book bag on her back. They would have known that. They would have seen something. If that car door didn't block the vision of that, because remember, she was short. They would have been able to see that, because see, that's too much detail. That is in fact me driving past and seeing a wheel well is too much detail just for me to even question of how wet was the child's hair on her head. Because see, even bows could be seen in that as in a sign, a detail on the retail. That's not funny, and yet it is, because to point out an examination is to see just that. What? That's why people don't like me around them oftentimes. Whoever that don't do what I do, as in serve how I serve, they don't like that, because I call out too much things that make them have to think. That's what I was told. You think too much, or slow down. You talk too fast. You're talking getting away. You got to pay attention. A driver passing enough to watch that sort of detail of a wheel well, and yet not watch a child but pay more attention to the wheel well, it's to even question that, because if you're seeing a wheel well, you would in fact see what colors even the child had, as in the bows or whatever else on her head. You will be able to make that sort of thing out, because there's a brightness in the light that even stands in that, as in the match of even the clue of what color bows did she have in her head. They're eyewitness. Yes, your eyewitness. The eyewitness, if they were able to see and stay even that, they would even be able to say whether the child has something in her hands, and if she had to exchange hands with what she was holding just enough to open up the door. If they were right there in the location of, say, almost coming to a stop standstill, just to watch just enough a child get into the car, they will be able to say how and the way she got into the vehicle. Too much of this stuff speaks as is it telling. Never ask me to get on something and then try to break this stuff down, because I will break it all the way down. Let me tell you, I have over 13 or 15,000 videos uploaded of me breaking scientifically each piece down, all the way down to that little girl's tennis shoe and how she could have stood in it as she was walking in the rain, or making her way out of that front door, as in possibly creeping out of the door, and I don't think she did that. But I'm just saying, even speaking to how that bow was possibly sitting there, and how somebody possibly could have put it there to taint something or something crazy, right? And when I mean taint, I mean the cover up part. You don't want an individual like me stepping to something like this, because with me, I will go completely off course, as in completely animalistic, and even that. Sizing things up. Despite me messing up over when I said the child walked that 26 miles, and yes, she didn't, because she was seen at 1.3 miles. And yet to know that she wasn't picked up is to know she walked further, as in a progression leading up to something or somewhere. So how are you seeing, dear neighbor, Asia's neighbor, how are you seeing someone before despite them leaving? That's an interesting question, let me tell you. That's a strike on the field, playing field or something, where all this means sports in the examination. Yeah, she would have had to walk much more further than that 1.3 miles because nobody picked her up. She could have walked 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever miles. That's common sense and logic and reasoning and even that. So where was the pointing position of the green car when the eyewitness said they seen her getting into it, along with them being able to descriptively describe the wheel wells? Where was the actual, because see, police mentioned a tip off of a green car, and yet not once did they mention the location of the car. Because see, even that points us in a direction here of the public trying to solve the mystery piece of where the car was. It beyond 1.3 miles? It had to have been. He calls too much. That man is irritating. It's this man that keep calling. He's a friend, family friend, right? But anyway, trying to be nice. But my goodness, when I'm trying to do something, I like to focus on what I'm doing. But so where was in fact that green Lincoln Continental or green Ford that police put out in the photo as Asia, speaking of her being a missing person? Where was that vehicle in fact planted, located at, as in seen by the eyewitness? I would love to know that. How many miles away was it seen away from the 1.3 miles? I'm thinking that car would have had to have been much more further, because in order for somebody to be driving before you and say be an eyewitness and see a child at 1.3 miles, right? It's to say they had to keep going as well as she had to keep walking. And so to be an eyewitness coming along, following behind, and even that, as in the trail along, seeing the eyewitness is to know, okay, those eyewitnesses kept driving. They saw Asia at 1.3 miles, and yet they kept driving. And yet Asia kept going. And so that means she traveled a little bit further. And then whoever that eyewitness was that seen that green car, they came after. There's a starting point and an ending point. Remember, I said that in sciences. There's a starting point as well as an ending point pertaining to solving things. You have to look at that. You can't look at the whole big picture and just say, well, that's it. No, it's not. You got to go smaller and smaller and delve deeper and deeper and deeper. So those individuals kept going, seeing her at 1.3 miles as she kept going, walking. And so what was the exact location of where that green vehicle stated? Because see, if it's set at, as I stated in the beginning, I'm repeating just enough for you to even remember, the viewer. If the car set at 1.3 miles, then somebody would have actually have seen something. The eyewitness, some said. And also police would have stated that. The police would have actually seen, I mean, whoever. I said that too. If Asia went into the woods, more likely she would have got stuck in the woods, depending on how thick the woods is. I just made a video about that, and I'm saying that how many times you need lighting to get your way out of the woods. Somebody would have had to help her by hand getting out of those woods. Let's let the clock run for a second over here of some amazing grace as it goes off. My mom's clock. Time me an eyewitness. That don't, yeah. Cars have distance to them, all of them. Any maker, model, of vehicle of a car has a distance with that, and there's even elevation in that, pointing to even the direction of the speed. Timing and the speed of where you said you're seeing something, maybe or maybe not. I said that, how people contact police after the information has been put out. They'll contact police and said they've seen something because they think reward money is in that. And yet sometimes they ain't even seen anything. They just going based upon the detail that police put out, the information that was already put out. They go by that and just repeat it just so that they can try to get reward money. That in itself is a no call, no show. As in, leave that alone. But, yes. Is that it? I think that's it. But the green car, yes, the green car is always going to be questionable to me. Because for a car to be sitting there and you know that it's there, or maybe not, who knows? Who knows what these eyewitnesses could have or could have not seen in all of this? Because something about that don't even add up. It's out of line. I myself know that anytime I'm passing and drifting along in the wind at some various speed, going past a young child and making her way into that car or vehicle, whatever she got into, if I was an onlooker, that would be the very first thing I would notice, pay attention to. And not only that, my vision wouldn't even stray in that. As in, could an opportunist have took Asia in the middle of the night? My vision would have been completely on that child. See, all this is just a mess, and it's tangular even in that. If that's not a word, I don't believe. That's a made word that I just created by accident. But even that is just suspect. You see a child getting into a car at that time and nobody think any of this seems suspicious enough to, if you were passing by the vehicle, or even if you had to go around the vehicle, to not enough make eyes, as in let your eyes meet the driver as you're passing along. Maybe the vision was too tied up in just seeing Asia make her way into that car, could be possibly why nobody's seen the driver. But even there's a distraction in that, as in when you're making your way past a car, still looking at the child, is to know you're going to see who's behind that car, as in the individual driving the car. As you're driving past thinking that looks whatever, suspicious, you're going to in fact be going past. If you went past, you're going to in fact be going past like this, looking. So as you're looking, going past, you have no choice but to keep your eyes on that child, but you're also going to have your head float past the driver in the car. Come on, y'all. Come on. See, I know how to fit things all around. Cross town. Maybe. If Asia was taken, but I don't think so. Right? I could be completely wrong, as in dead wrong on my end. But any fool would know. Not any fool. Because I didn't know until I thought about it right now. So maybe even I myself am a fool and just plain like an intellect. Maybe I should have said that from the beginning. But to know that you're driving past a car, if that eyewitness drove past and say Asia then was getting right here and she was getting in the car, it's to know you're going past and you're going to look like, man, that looks suspicious right there. But as you're looking at the child. But remember, the child in fact meets your eyes right here as you're going past, as well as that driver. Yes, it does. That's a radius. It points to outside, top to bottom, as well as inside, right? That's in fact what that is. You're going to be driving, and as you're looking, if you're that nosy, you're going to in fact be going past. Almost lock into Asia's face, if say she's not over the car, or maybe she is. Maybe by then she's too short to even hang over the car, depending on how tall she was getting in the car. But I'm thinking somewhere in that still, as you're going past, you would still have been looking just enough to see going past, like, man, that is strange right there. What is going on with that? And then you see the driver, and he might in fact see you, or she might in fact see you, whoever was driving that vehicle, to supposedly take Asia along her way. I know my mind is too much. My mind is too much, let me tell you. I can't even sleep at night. Sometimes my mind is too much. But that's all to be said, because I want to end this before this runs out. So let me know, like, subscribe, share your own detail, share your own situation, share your own family life. Share whatever. I'm intrigued to know even that, as in your life situation, anything like you that you have done, say running away, leaving away, leaving abuse. Because that's what starts everything, is abuse in the beginning. And sometimes not just being lured out of a house by a false, crooked individual. Tell me, where was this green car at when the eyewitnesses said that they seen her? And I want you to tell me sometime at night, when you're out on the road somewhere, I want you to tell me as in a pinpoint, yes, scientific project, and even Discovery will be proud of me in that, as in you go outside one night. Yes, one night when there's no light nowhere, wherever neighborhood that there's not much light, and drive down somewhere and drive past a car and tell me, can you see the wheel wells being rusted as the car is sitting there? Because I could absolutely be wrong about what I stated, but yeah, who knows? Until somebody try it and figure out. Possibly the lady is a lady that run that blog over there. She will more than likely do something like that because she seemed like she's into that. FindingAsiaDegree.com. That seemed to be her thing. But to take it further is to help even her with that, because she's trying to help police as well. So that's all to be said about that. Where was the marking of the car? Where was it at? The make, model, vehicle. Where was it at? As in the transaction of let's exchange hands and get in the car and go about our business to never be found again. Dear Asia, 9 years old, who left. Supposedly. And yet I don't think she did. But just to question enough is to do just that. Hear what Out of Mike said. So, I'm going to end this video. The neighbor. That neighbor. See, the father's 911 call, and I said that about that neighbor. That don't add up. That neighbor speaks the most. The father speaks the most. The neighbor speaks the most. But more than anything, even that green car speaks the most. Because where does those sort of things come from? Because see, if somebody's seen a green car like that, it's to say they have seen somebody do something before, as in get in and out of that car just enough to tip off the police from the very beginning. That was why I mentioned if police was playing a game with the public. They wouldn't do those sort of things. No, they don't. No, they would not. The police don't do that sort of. I ain't gonna say nothing more than that. But the police, when I said that, I said what I said for a reason. Because how are you tipping off the police with a car if you were nowhere around in the investigation, unless you were, say, that eyewitness, and yet all the details stands off? As in it's a standoff, as in a closing aspect on even that of which it could have saw about some rotting wheels. Not rotting, but rusted wheel wells. That is so strange. This video gonna cut off. Maybe I should keep talking until it cut off. That is so strange for you to pay attention to some wheel wells and not pay more specific attention to detail of a child is getting into a car with a possible killer, knowing that you're in the country. See, country bumpkins know this sort of thing, that anything might play out after this child get into this car. They done heard enough stories. North Carolina had its own situation, I think back in the 70s or 80s, something crazy like that, where there was in fact, I think, a mass murder or somebody. I think I seen that. No, wait, hold on. That is wrong. Let me rewind back. That's Virginia. That is in Virginia, in the backwoods of Virginia. People have been known to kill people out in backwoods of Virginia and everywhere else. But in North Carolina, it was known back in the day, somewhere around the 70s or the 80s, where people was getting so drunk and intoxicated. Is my year off? But this is in fact a real story. People were in fact getting so drunk and intoxicated. Yes. Many of people was doing this thing, getting drunk, so heavily drunk, intoxicated, that they would in fact go lay out in the middle of the road, thinking it was in fact a bed, because the road gets warm when it's at night. You know, heat rises, right? But in the summertime at night, a road, alcoholics and stuff like that black out, many of them were drawn to the actual road and the fiber of the road because it was warm. And they would think that it was in fact a bed or a couch or sofa, love seat, just enough for them to lay flat. And that's how many of them died in the middle of the road, as in got ran over on rural roads in North Carolina. A fact is just that. Yes, that was back. That had to be somewhere, was that the 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s? I would have to go back and backtrack and even look that up. To read something and study something so many years back is to remember and yet not specifically remember the date, the time, and the year. On even that, of these grown men that was literally getting killed in the middle of North Carolina rural roads because you were like a full-blown alcoholic, got drawn to the road because it was warm, and then you laid down in the middle of the road and somebody came and just killed you, not being able to see that you were there. Which them stories was quite weird when you think about it. Like, that is so weird, but people in fact do those type of things. When you're too drunk to make your way even through enough to see, because alcohol played a part as in distorting the vision and view of your thinking processes, is to know people have did those sort of things if they weren't being butchered. Somebody included that too in their book. I saw that as an excerpt. So that's all to be said about this. I'm gonna close this video because it's a bit long, and it should be. It's to help you to analyze and keep up on even your critical thinking skills. So enjoy your day, and I'll holler back on another way, but not in the dark. Not that.